She left me for a rich guy, but I became richer than both of them. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "You'll never be enough for the life I want." That sentence has lived rent-free in my head ever since. I can still remember her tone, calm, calculated, not even angry, just done. Like I was some failed experiment she had tolerated for too long. We were sitting in the living room, the same one I used to dream we'd grow old in. She had her suitcase packed, her makeup flawless, her phone lighting up with a message from him. She didn't even try to hide it. "I'm tired of struggling," she said, adjusting her coat. "He can give me stability. You can't even pay your half of the rent on time." That part stung because it was true. At the time, I was scraping by, working long hours at a job that barely paid my bills, chasing dreams no one believed in, not even her. I thought love would be enough. I thought loyalty mattered more than income. But to her, love without luxury was just wasted time. And apparently I was the waste. She left that night just like that. No tears, no long goodbye. Just slammed the door and walked straight into the passenger seat of a black car waiting outside. I watched from the window as she leaned in and kissed him. A man I'd seen once in passing. Designer suit, flashy car. That empty confidence rich men wear like cologne. And her? She was already laughing like the last few years with me had been nothing but a bad movie she'd finally walked out of. I didn't cry right away. I sat on the couch for hours, staring at nothing, trying to make sense of what had just happened. 1 minute, she was in my arms. The next, she was someone else's trophy. And the worst part? She didn't even flinch when she left. She didn't just walk out of my life. She spit on everything we built together and smiled doing it. Over the next few weeks, I unraveled. I stopped eating, stopped answering texts. My apartment looked like a war zone. My job performance tanked. I remember overhearing one of my coworkers whisper, "He looks like he hasn't slept in days." They were right. I hadn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her laughing in his car. I saw her looking at me like I was nothing. I heard her voice repeating, "You'll never be enough." But rock bottom has a funny way of introducing you to the version of yourself you never thought you'd meet. One morning, I looked at myself in the mirror, really looked, and I saw someone I didn't recognize. Pale, hollow-eyed, defeated. And I thought, if I stay like this, she wins. If I let this moment define me, if I let her opinion of me become the truth, then I'll be exactly who she said I was, nothing. So I made a decision. No more pity. No more self-hate. No more trying to figure out why she left. I was going to focus on the only thing I could control, me. I started small. Woke up earlier. Cleaned the apartment. Blocked her number. Canceled every streaming service that kept me glued to the couch. I dragged myself to the gym, even though my arms felt like noodles and my soul felt worse. I started lifting, running, pushing. Every rep was a reminder. She left, but I was still here, still breathing, still fighting. Then came the second phase, the hustle. I'd always wanted to start my own business, something that combined my skills with my passion. But I'd always made excuses. Too tired, too broke, too afraid. But heartbreak burns bridges. And on the other side is nothing but raw fire. I used that fire. Took online courses, learned how to build websites, how to market, how to scale. Every weekend was work. Every night after my shift, I poured hours into building my brand. No parties, no distractions, just pure, focused revenge disguised as growth. First, nothing happened. A few clicks, couple of sales. But I kept going. I refined, rebuilt, rebranded. And then, slowly, something shifted. Orders started coming in. Then more. Then I got featured on a niche blog. Then a podcast. Suddenly, people were emailing me, wanting to collaborate, to invest, to buy in. And as all of this was happening, something else changed too. I stopped thinking about her. Not completely, not all at once, but the sharp pain dulled. The memory of her face started fading. And that sentence, "You'll never be enough," started sounding less like prophecy and more like a joke, because I was becoming something. Not to prove her wrong, not even to make her regret it, but to finally prove to myself what I should have known all along. She didn't leave because I wasn't enough. She left because she couldn't see the man I was about to become. The grind became my therapy. Every early morning run, every late-night brainstorming session, every canceled plan with friends, it all became fuel. I wasn't chasing her memory anymore. I was chasing the life I should have been building from the start. The version of me that didn't need approval or permission. I cut out distractions. I stopped scrolling through her new life, stopped checking her social media to see what lavish restaurants he was taking her to or what filtered vacation photos they were posting. None of it mattered anymore because slowly I was building something real, something that didn't need filters to look valuable. I moved into a smaller apartment, not because I had to, but because I wanted to eliminate everything that reminded me of her. Every room in that old place was haunted by her perfume, her voice, her cold eyes the night she walked away. The new place was bare at first. No decor, no comfort. Just 4 clean walls and a desk. But it was mine. It was the foundation. And I started treating it like a launch pad, not a prison. I wrote goals on the walls with markers. Crazy goals. Stuff that sounded impossible. Triple my income. Open a second stream of revenue. Become a client, not an employee. Start lifting heavy enough to outgrow my clothes. And every day I worked like I was already the man who had achieved those things. A few months in, the money started to follow the effort. My business began to scale, online sales spiked, referrals poured in, and a local magazine reached out for a feature. Then a bigger one. Suddenly, my inbox was filled with partnership offers, content creators asking to promote my products, people who wanted to pay me for advice I used to give away for free. I hired a small team, moved my operations out of my apartment and into a modest office space. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Every chair, every keyboard, every late-night coffee stain on the desk. It was all built from the ashes of being left behind. And I wasn't just building a business. I was building me. My body transformed. I went from tired and sunken to sharp and solid. I wasn't the same guy who stood in that apartment watching her leave through the window. That man was gone. In his place was someone who no longer begged to be chosen. Someone who no longer feared being alone. Ate clean. Trained harder. Slept better. I walked into rooms with my head up and my shoulders back. People noticed. They started treating me differently, not just because I looked better or dressed better, but because I felt different. I wasn't trying to prove my worth anymore. I just was. And then, about 11 months after she left, I saw her again for the first time. I was out at a networking event, one of those semi-formal rooftop mixer things with overpriced drinks and plastic smiles. I almost didn't go, but a business partner had insisted. I was standing near the bar, talking with 2 potential investors about a new expansion strategy, when I felt someone watching me. You know that feeling when eyes burn into your back. I turned slowly, and there she was. Same dress style, same overly rehearsed smile. But something was different. She didn't have the same glow. Her eyes looked tired. Her posture wasn't as confident. And she wasn't alone, but she also wasn't with him. The guy beside her wasn't the rich boyfriend she'd left me for. This one looked like a placeholder. Nervous hands. Shifty eyes. Someone trying too hard to fit into a world he didn't belong to. I raised my glass to her. Just a slight nod. Her jaw clenched. She didn't come over. But she didn't look away either. Later that night, I found out what had happened. The rich guy, the one she'd thrown everything away for, he cheated. Left her for someone younger, fancier, glossier. And apparently he didn't just leave, he drained her. She had quit her job to live off his wealth, moved into his condo, traveled on his dime. And when he cut her off, she had nothing. No income, no apartment, no dignity. She tried crawling back to her old job, but people talked. They always do, especially when you fall that far, that fast. I should have felt satisfied. I should have felt that rush of karmic justice, the thrill of watching someone who broke me fall flat on their face. But honestly, all I felt was distance, like I was watching a stranger from a life I barely remembered. I'd outgrown the pain. I'd outgrown her. But fate, it seems, wasn't done with our story. because a few weeks later we crossed paths again. And this time I wasn't alone either. But that moment deserves its own scene. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's elevation. It happened on a Friday evening at one of those trendy restaurants downtown, the kind with minimalist decor, ambient lighting, and a reservation list booked out for weeks. I had just closed a major partnership deal with a national retailer and decided to celebrate. Not alone. This time I had someone with me. Someone who didn't care about my bank account, didn't ask what kind of car I drove, and didn't measure my worth by the size of my wallet. She was different. Kind eyes, sharp mind, grounded. She didn't need to impress anyone because she already knew who she was. And being around her made me realize how little I truly had in my last relationship, despite trying to give everything. We were seated near the back, in a private corner. I remember laughing at something she said. Genuine laughter, the kind that doesn't come with pressure or performance. I felt light, free, in control of my life for the first time in years. Then I heard her voice. Faint at first, but unmistakable. I looked up and there she was. She was standing near the host stand, waiting to be seated, glancing around the restaurant. Alone. She hadn't seen me yet, but the second our eyes met, everything stopped. Her smile dropped, her body tensed, and I could see it in her face. That instant regret, that realization of what she'd walked away from. I watched her scan me from head to toe. I didn't flinch. I didn't shrink. I didn't look away. I just held her gaze, cool and calm, until she finally looked down and followed the hostess to her table across the room. She was seated alone. No rich boyfriend. No new prospect. No backup plan. Just her and a menu she didn't seem to read. She kept glancing over, her eyes darting to my table like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. I didn't blame her. I wasn't the same man she left. Not even close. My date noticed. "Is that someone you know?" she asked casually. I smiled. "An old chapter. Long closed." She nodded and didn't press. That's what I loved about her. She didn't play games. No jealousy, no drama, no need for stories. Just trust. Halfway through dinner, I got up to use the restroom. As I passed her table, she called out. Softly, almost afraid. "Can we talk?" I turned to face her. She looked different now. Not just physically, though there was that too. The designer clothes were gone. The glow-up she'd once flaunted had dulled. But more than that, she looked small. Like the weight of everything she'd chosen was finally pressing down. I nodded once. "Make it quick." She stood and followed me a few steps away from her table. She didn't even wait to find the right words. She just started. "I made a mistake." Her voice cracked, and for a moment I wondered if this was rehearsed or real. He wasn't who I thought he was. He promised things and then just switched. I lost everything. And when I saw you, I didn't recognize you. You've changed. I tilted my head slightly. Or maybe I just stopped being the version of myself who tolerated being treated like an option. She blinked fast, like she didn't expect that. Maybe she thought I'd play nice. That I'd soften. That I'd remember the nights we used to stay up talking, the meals we cooked together, the plans we scribbled on napkins. But I didn't. I remembered how it felt to be left behind like luggage too cheap to bring on a first-class flight. "I didn't know what I wanted," she whispered. "And I was scared we'd never make it out of that place, stuck in the same routine forever. But I see now you were just building." She looked up at me, and her voice dropped lower. "Would you ever? Could you ever?" No, the answer came out before she could finish the question. I didn't owe her hesitation. "I'm not angry anymore, but I'm also not available. You left, and now someone else gets the version of me you never believed in." I walked away before she could respond. Not out of cruelty, but because there was nothing else to say. I returned to my table, sat down, picked up my glass, and toasted quietly to the future. My date smiled. "Everything okay?" "Better than okay," I said. "I just realized I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." And I meant it, because in that moment, I saw my life clearly. What I'd built, what I'd become, what I'd survived. And I didn't need her validation. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need her to hurt the way I had. All I needed was that silence, that wide-eyed stare, that subtle nod that said, I know I lost something good. She chose wealth over loyalty, comfort over character. But wealth fades, comfort cracks, and character builds empires. And mine was just getting started. After that night, something shifted in me permanently. Not because I finally had the last word or because I got to watch her squirm under the weight of her choices, but because I realized how far I'd come. The man who once begged for her attention, who questioned his worth every time she compared him to someone richer, flashier, louder, that man was gone. I didn't just move on. I elevated. I evolved. And once you've done that, there's no going back. Not to the person, not to the pain, not to the pattern. The world felt different now. The air felt lighter. I wasn't chasing success to prove a point anymore. I was building because it felt right. Because it aligned with who I had become. My company wasn't just profitable, it was thriving. I had a full-time team, clients in multiple cities, and investors wanting in. I was featured in business podcasts, invited to speak at entrepreneur panels, getting recognition for work that, not long ago, I was doing alone in a studio apartment that barely had a working heater. But it wasn't just about the numbers. The real reward was internal. I had developed discipline, confidence, purpose. I no longer feared losing people because I had learned how to never lose myself again. And yet, she started reappearing. Not physically, but digitally. I noticed her viewing my stories, liking comments on mutual friends' posts. I even got an anonymous email that had her handwriting all over it, talking about regret, timing, and fate. Classic breadcrumbs. But I didn't touch a single one. I didn't even entertain the idea of responding. Because here's the thing. Some people aren't sorry they hurt you. They're sorry they can't reach you anymore. And that's what this was. She wasn't reaching out because she loved me. She was reaching out because I no longer needed her. And nothing threatens a person who once controlled you more than seeing you walk away and build a better life without them. My days were full now. I had purpose, routine, balance. I was coaching other young entrepreneurs, mentoring kids from neighborhoods like mine, trying to give them the map I never had. And my nights? They were spent with someone who saw me before the success, who valued the man, not the brand. She never asked me how much money I made, never cared about my follower count, never flinched when I opened up about my past. She loved the scars, not just the polished parts. And that was new. That was real. One day, I got a call from a former mutual friend. Someone who hadn't picked sides when the breakup happened. Someone who stayed neutral, silent. He said, "She's not doing too well. Heard she moved back in with her parents for a bit. Can't keep a job. Keeps talking about how she made the biggest mistake of her life." I didn't say much in response. Just thanked him for letting me know and hung up. Because again, it wasn't my problem. Her mistakes weren't my burden to carry. I had carried them long enough while she blamed me for every shortcoming, every inconvenience. I had bent and broken myself trying to meet her impossible expectations, and now I was finally living on my own terms. A few weeks after that call, I received a message request on social media. It was her. No fake account, no anonymity this time. Just her full name and a short message. "I was wrong about you. I see that now. I'm sorry." And you know what? I didn't respond. Not out of bitterness. Not because I was trying to hurt her. But because there are moments in life when silence speaks louder than anything else. When healing means not reopening a door just to slam it again. When growth means respecting your peace more than your pride. She had made her choice. She'd left me when I was building, when I had nothing but a dream and some grit. And now that I'd built it, I didn't need to invite her in just to prove she was wrong. She already knew it. The truth is, some people are only meant to be the fuel for your rise, not the ones who rise with you. And when you finally learn to separate the two, life gets a whole lot clearer. But there's one final chapter to this story. One last encounter that I never expected. And it didn't happen on a rooftop or at a restaurant or through a phone screen. It happened where it all started, on the very street where she left me. And this time, she wasn't walking away. It was almost exactly a year to the day since she walked out of my life, suitcase in hand, lips curled into a smug little smile, convinced she was trading up. And here I was, walking down that same street where it all ended. Only now it felt like a different planet. I had just left a meeting with one of my new partners, someone who had been introduced to me through the network I built from scratch, and I decided to take a nostalgic detour through the old neighborhood. Same cracked sidewalks, same flickering streetlights, same corner store where we used to buy cheap wine and pretend the world didn't weigh us down. I wasn't expecting anything. I wasn't looking for closure. I just wanted to walk through a place that used to make me feel small and remind myself that I wasn't that person anymore. And then I saw her, standing outside the cafe where we'd had our first real date. She looked different. Not bad, just faded. Like someone who had lived too fast and burned out too early. Her hair was tied back in a messy bun, and her once pristine designer coat now looked like it had survived a few too many cold nights. She was staring at her phone, scrolling like she was trying to escape through the screen. She didn't see me at first. I could have kept walking, could have slipped by unnoticed and left her in my past where she belonged. But something inside me said, no, let her see. So I crossed the street, not alone. The woman beside me, the one I was now proud to call mine, held my hand with the kind of quiet confidence that doesn't need to be flaunted. She wasn't draped in labels or dripping in attention-seeking makeup. She didn't need to prove anything to anyone. She was elegance without effort, real without apology. And as we stepped onto the sidewalk across from the cafe, my ex finally looked up. She froze. For a second, she didn't even blink. Her eyes moved from me to the woman holding my hand, then back to me again, as if trying to process the scene. I didn't stop walking. I didn't change my pace. I didn't smile, didn't nod, didn't offer even a whisper of recognition. I just walked right past her like she was another face in a city full of strangers. But in that half second, when our eyes met, I saw everything I needed. Regret. Not the loud, dramatic kind that screams and begs and cries. No, this was quieter, heavier. The kind that hits you in the middle of a sidewalk with no one to catch you. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something. Maybe to apologize. Maybe to explain. Maybe to scream, "Look at what you've become." But she didn't, because she knew. And that silence between us, that was the loudest truth either of us had ever shared. We turned the corner and kept walking. My girlfriend looked at me and asked, "Someone you used to know?" I smiled. "Someone who taught me what I'll never accept again." She squeezed my hand a little tighter. That was it. No need for long conversations, no emotional unpacking. Just forward motion. The rest of the day unfolded like any other. Smooth, simple, purposeful. And that's what healing really looks like. Not dramatic declarations or revenge served cold, but steady steps away from the version of yourself that needed their validation. I didn't need her to admit she was wrong. I didn't need her to see me with someone better, happier, stronger. But she did. And that moment, that look on her face, that weight in her silence, that was the final page. Not of a love story, but of a lesson. Because real success, it isn't just about money or muscles or followers. It's about becoming so whole, so unshakably grounded in who you are, that the people who once made you feel like nothing wouldn't even recognize the person you've become. And here's the part one really want you to hear. If someone left you when you had nothing, don't waste a single second trying to win them back with everything. Use that pain. Let it sharpen you, fuel you, teach you. But don't carry it forever. Because there's someone out there who won't need the polished version of you to love you. They'll love the one who's still building, still healing, still hoping. I was left behind, mocked, rejected. I was told I'd never be enough. And then I became more than they ever thought possible. So if you're down right now, if you're heartbroken, broke, confused, doubting everything, good. That means you're right at the edge of becoming someone no one sees coming. Let them go. Let them watch. And when you rise, don't just prove them wrong. Prove yourself right. If this story hit home for you, if you've ever been counted out, left behind, or underestimated, subscribe and drop a comment. Tell your story. Your comeback might already be in motion, and you don't even know it yet.